6 minutes past 3 in the morning. January 24, 1942, off the coast of Luzon in the Philippine Sea. The ocean is black glass. On the bridge of the submarine USS Sargo, Lieutenant Commander Thomas Harper grips the cold steel rail and listens. No one speaks above a whisper. The air smells of oil and metal. Far ahead, barely visible against the horizon, a faint shadow moves across the moonlit water. A Japanese cargo ship, slow, heavy, alone. Down below, in the forward torpedo room, Chief Torpedoman Samuel Sam Ortega wipes sweat from his palms. It is not heat, it is nerves. He has checked the Mark 14 torpedoes twice already. He knows their weight, he knows their wiring, he knows their promise. America's newest submarine weapon. Fast, powerful, advanced, or so they were told. Set depth 10 feet, Harper orders quietly. A sailor repeats it. Valves turn, compressed air hisses. Steel creaks around them. You can almost feel the tension pressing against your chest. Weeks earlier, the attack on Pearl Harbor shattered illusions. Now, these submariners are among the few Americans striking back in the Pacific. They know every torpedo matters. Fire one. The boat shudders gently as the weapon leaves its tube. Inside the submarine, time stretches. No one breathes. They count silently. 1001, 1002. Harper watches through the periscope. The torpedo's wake cuts a pale line across the water, straight and true. It should hit. It does hit, and nothing happens. No flash, no plume of water, no explosion. The torpedo slams into the hull of the cargo ship with a dull splash and disappears beneath it, as if swallowed by the sea. The Japanese vessel continues forward, unhurt, unaware. Down in the torpedo room, Ortega feels his stomach drop. Fire two. Another launch, another white wake, another perfect approach. This one passes beneath the target entirely. The ship sails on, black and silent, carrying fuel and ammunition to Japanese forces spreading across Southeast Asia. On the bridge, Harper lowers the periscope slowly. Take her down. The submarine slips beneath the waves. No cheering, no celebration, only confusion. This is not the first time. Across the Pacific in early 1942, American submarines are reporting the same thing. Torpedoes running too deep, torpedoes striking and failing to explode. Torpedoes circling back dangerously toward their own boats. The weapon meant to choke Japan's empire is betraying its crews. In Washington, the Bureau of Ordnance insists the Mark 14 is reliable. The problem, they suggest, lies with the men using it. Faulty calculations, nervous skippers, bad tactics. But in the steel hulls rolling beneath enemy waters, doubt grows. Ortega sits on his bunk hours later, staring at his grease-stained hands. He replays the launch in his mind. The angles were correct, the depth was correct, everything was correct. So why did the ocean swallow the explosion? Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in Tokyo, Japanese naval officers gather around shipping reports. American submarines have been sighted, a few attacks reported, minimal losses. Some officers laugh quietly. The American submarine force, they believe, is ineffective, clumsy, overhyped. Convoys continue to sail without heavy escort. Tankers cross open water in daylight. Transports move troops toward the Philippines, toward Malaya, toward the Dutch East Indies. Japan's expansion surges forward, fueled by oil and steel moving across blue highways of sea. Back in the Pacific depths, Harper writes his patrol report carefully. He does not exaggerate. He does not accuse. He simply states facts. 2 direct hits, no detonation. He knows how it sounds. You can imagine the frustration. Young sailors risking their lives, stalking enemy ships in hostile waters, only to watch their best shots fail. In war, confidence is fragile. And right now, American submariners are losing faith in the one tool meant to give them power. The Mark 14 torpedo carries a sophisticated magnetic exploder, designed to detonate beneath the ship's keel. In theory, the blast should break a vessel in half. In practice, it often does nothing at all. And as the months pass in 1942, the consequences begin to add up. Tankers deliver oil to Japanese fleets. Freighters carry food to island garrisons. Transports move reinforcements to battlefields, where American forces fight desperately to hold the line. Each failed explosion echoes far beyond the silent sea. On another patrol, weeks later, Harper stands again at the periscope. Another target, another chance. He hesitates for half a second before giving the order. He no longer trusts the weapon, but he has no choice. Fire. The torpedo streaks forward, and once again, the ocean answers with silence. March 7, 1942. South China Sea. Just after dawn. A thin gray light spreads across calm water as USS Sargo lies at periscope depth. Lieutenant Commander Harper has dark circles under his eyes. He has not slept much in weeks. Through the lens, he sees them. 3 ships in loose formation, 2 freighters and a smaller escort, a convoy, real targets. Down below, Chief Ortega moves slowly along the torpedo tubes. He runs his hand across the smooth steel casing of a Mark 14. It feels solid, reliable. It feels like something that should work. "Range 1,000 yards, comes the whisper from the control room. Harper steadies his breathing. He calculates angles, speed, bearing. Everything aligns cleanly. Fire 1, fire 2, fire 3. 3 soft jolts. 3 trails cutting through water. Inside the submarine, the crew counts again, not out loud, just in their heads. 1001, 1002. Harper watches the wakes approach the lead freighter. They pass beneath it. All 3. The torpedoes run too deep, sliding harmlessly under the hull before continuing into open sea. The freighter sails on. For a moment, no one speaks. Then someone mutters a curse under his breath. Harper lowers the periscope slowly. His jaw tightens. Below decks, Ortega stares at the depth settings. He had set them for 10 feet. They are running at least 10 feet deeper than ordered. Maybe more. This is not bad luck. This is not poor aim. Something is wrong. Across the Pacific in 1942, similar patrol reports stack up like unanswered letters. Submarines from Pearl Harbor to Fremantle are telling the same story. Torpedoes are diving deeper than set depth. Others hit the side of ships with a heavy metallic thud and fail to explode. Some detonate prematurely, short of the target. And a few, the most terrifying of all, circle back toward the submarine that fired them. On board USS Sargo, Harper gathers his officers in the cramped wardroom that night. A single red bulb casts long shadows across their tired faces. "We are going to test it ourselves," he says quietly. No speeches, no anger, just determination. The next afternoon, far from shipping lanes, the submarine surfaces. A small wooden raft is lowered overboard as a makeshift target. A torpedo is fired under controlled conditions. The crew watches from the deck. The weapon streaks forward and dives. It runs far below the raft. Ortega exhales sharply. There it is. Proof. Harper notes the result carefully in his log. He knows some officials back home have dismissed similar complaints, but this is no rumor now. It is visible, undeniable. The Mark 14's depth-keeping mechanism is flawed. Yet even with evidence, change moves slowly. In Washington, production lines are running at full speed. Admitting a design flaw would mean halting shipments, revising components, acknowledging that America's primary submarine weapon has been unreliable during a critical phase of war. So patrols continue. You can picture it. American submarines slipping into enemy waters, knowing that even a perfect firing solution may end in failure. Meanwhile, Japanese shipping officers grow more confident. Convoys move with lighter escorts. Tankers travel predictable routes. Losses are smaller than expected. In the summer of 1942, a Japanese logistics officer in Singapore reviews reports. American submarines have attacked. Damage limited. Supplies continue to arrive. He shrugs and signs off on another shipment of fuel bound for the fleet near the Solomon Islands. That fuel will power ships at battles like Guadalcanal. It will feed aircraft. It will keep an empire moving. And beneath those same waters, submariners like Harper feel their frustration harden into resolve. By late 1942, more commanders begin conducting independent tests. They adjust depth settings manually. If a torpedo is set to run at 10 feet, they dial it down to 0, trying to compensate. Sometimes it works. Often it does not. Then there's the magnetic exploder, designed to sense the metal mass of a ship and detonate beneath it. In theory, brilliant. In practice, unpredictable. In certain waters, changes in the Earth's magnetic field trigger early explosions. In others, nothing happens at all. On a later patrol, Harper lines up another freighter. This time, one torpedo strikes squarely against the hull. A clear hit, visible impact. It does not explode. The freighter's crew spots the disturbance in the water and begins evasive maneuvers. Moments later, depth charges roll off the escort ship. The sea erupts. Inside, Sargo, lights flicker as shockwaves slam against the hull. Dust shakes loose from pipes. Men grip whatever they can hold. Ortega braces himself against a bulkhead as another explosion thunders above. Each failed torpedo is no longer just frustration. It is danger. A missed shot means exposure. Exposure means depth charges. And depth charges mean death. Hours later, after slipping away in silence, Harper sits alone with his patrol report. He writes the truth again. Torpedo hit, no detonation. As 1942 closes, a pattern is undeniable. The submarine force is fighting two enemies, Japan above the waves, and its own defective weapon below them. But something is shifting. Reports are growing too numerous to ignore. Commanders are pushing harder. Independent tests are multiplying. Pressure is building inside the Navy itself. The laughter in Tokyo will not last forever. And somewhere deep in the Pacific, the solution is beginning to take shape. January 17, 1943. Pearl Harbor Naval Base, 8:20 in the morning. The sun rises calm and bright over the harbor. Battleships rest quietly along the docks. Submarines line the piers like dark, patient sharks. Inside a low concrete building near the waterfront, a meeting is already tense. Captain Charles Lockwood has just arrived in the Pacific to take a new command within the submarine force. He is not impressed by what he has been reading. Stacked on the table in front of him are patrol reports, dozens of them. Torpedo hit. No detonation. Ran too deep. Premature explosion. Lockwood listens as skippers speak one by one. These are not careless men. These are professionals. Calm, measured, frustrated. One commander describes watching 4 torpedoes strike a tanker without a single blast. Another recounts a circular run that nearly sank his own boat. Lockwood leans back in his chair and studies their faces. He believes them. That belief changes everything. Back in 1942, complaints often stopped at polite acknowledgement. Now, under new leadership, they turn into action. Within weeks, controlled tests are ordered near Hawaii. Submarines fire live torpedoes against cliffs and nets in shallow water where impact points can be observed directly. Chief Ortega, temporarily reassigned to assist with testing, stands aboard a small support vessel and watches through binoculars. A torpedo is fired at a suspended net calibrated to measure depth. The wake looks clean. When it passes the net, observers exchange glances. It is running 10 to 15 feet deeper than set. The evidence is undeniable. The depth mechanism is miscalibrated. Lockwood pushes further. Magnetic exploders are tested under different conditions. In many cases, they detonate too early. In others, not at all. Finally, impact exploders are examined. Engineers discover a flaw in the firing pin design. When a torpedo strikes a ship at a perfect 90-degree angle, the force can bend internal parts instead of triggering detonation. A perfect hit can fail. You can imagine the mix of anger and relief among the crews. Relief because they were right. Anger because the flaw cost months of opportunity and lives. Lockwood makes a decision that some consider bold. Disable the magnetic feature. Modify the depth settings. Redesign the firing pin. It is not instant. Changes require coordination, parts, new instructions. But for the time, momentum is on the side of the submariners. In April 1943, USS Sargo returns to sea with adjusted torpedoes. Harper stands at the periscope again. Older now, harder. Chief Ortega checks the tubes with quiet focus. There is no celebration, just cautious hope. April 23rd, 1943. East China Sea, late afternoon. A Japanese tanker moves steadily across calm water heavy with oil bound for the fleet. Harper tracks it carefully. He calculates the angle. The range is good, close enough to see crew members moving along the deck. Set depth 6 feet, he says. Ortega double-checks the adjustment. The numbers are different now. The torpedoes have been recalibrated. Fire 1. The launch is smooth. The wake slices forward. Inside the submarine, the crew waits. The torpedo strikes beneath the tanker's hull. This time, the sea erupts. A column of water and flame surges upward. The tanker shudders violently. Smoke begins to rise. For a split second, no one inside Sargo reacts. It is as if they do not trust what they are seeing. Then the second torpedo hits. Another explosion, louder, deeper. The tanker breaks into chaos. Men scramble across the deck. Lifeboats are lowered. Fire spreads along the oil-slicked surface. Harper exhales slowly. He does not cheer. He simply nods once. Below, Ortega grips the edge of a table, steadying himself as the shockwave passes through the hull. It worked. After more than a year of doubt, of silent impacts and wasted shots, the torpedo has done what it was designed to do. Across the Pacific in mid-1943, similar scenes begin to unfold. Submarines report successful detonations. Confirmed sinkings rise sharply. Japanese shipping officers notice the change quickly. Tankers that once crossed open water without fear now vanish. Freighters fail to arrive. Convoys tighten. Escorts increase. Routes shift. The laughter fades. The war beneath the waves is no longer a frustrating sideshow. It is becoming something far more serious. And Japan's lifelines, stretched across thousands of miles of ocean, are beginning to fray. November 3, 1943. Philippine Sea, just before midnight. Rain falls in thin sheets across dark water. The sea is restless, but not violent. Perfect weather for a submarine. USS Sargo moves at periscope depth, engines humming low and steady. Inside, red lights wash the control room in a dim glow. Men speak in murmurs. Every sound feels amplified. Lieutenant Commander Harper stands at the periscope again. He turns it slowly. There, on the horizon, multiple shapes, a convoy, 3 cargo ships, 1 tanker, 2 escorts weaving back and forth like sheepdogs. Below, Chief Ortega checks the torpedo tubes one last time. The Mark 14 torpedoes now feel different to him. Not because they look different. They do not. But because he trusts them. Trust changes everything. Range 1,200 yards, whispers the fire control officer. Harper studies the formation. The tanker is the prize. Fuel means mobility. Mobility means fleets. And fleets mean war that stretches on. He makes his choice. Fire 1, Fire 2. 2 torpedoes surge forward. You can almost feel the silence inside the submarine as they run. No one moves. No one breathes loudly. Through the periscope, Harper sees the first explosion slam into the tanker's side. A flash, then another. The ship lurches, black smoke pouring into the rain. Within seconds, escorts react. Searchlights snap on. Guns begin firing blindly into darkness. Take her down. Hard left rudder. Sargo dives. Above, depth charges roll off the escorts and tumble into the sea. The first explosion rocks the submarine. A second follows closer. Dust falls from overhead pipes. Gauges rattle. Ortega braces himself, eyes fixed on the bulkhead. He knows what these blasts can do. He has felt them before. But this time, something is different. This time, the damage above is real. By late 1943, the United States submarine force is no longer struggling. It is hunting. Across the Pacific, boats fan out from bases in Pearl Harbor, Midway, Australia. They patrol choke points and sea lanes, the Luzon Strait, the South China Sea, the waters around Formosa. Japanese shipping losses begin to climb sharply. In Tokyo, shipping officers stare at maps dotted with red marks. Each mark represents a ship that did not arrive. Oil tankers disappear at alarming rates. Cargo vessels vanish between ports. At first, they blame aircraft, then mines, then bad luck. But the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Submarines, American submarines. On board Sargo weeks later, Harper reviews intelligence briefings. Japan depends on oil from the Dutch East Indies. It depends on food from Southeast Asia. It depends on raw materials from across its empire. Every ton must travel by sea, and the sea is no longer safe. January 14, 1944, South China Sea. Early morning haze. Sargo intercepts another convoy. This one heavily loaded. Rice, ammunition, replacement aircraft parts. Harper coordinates a spread of torpedoes. Fire 3, fire 4. Two explosions strike almost simultaneously. A freighter lists heavily. Another catches fire. Escort ships rush to respond, but the pattern is repeating across the Pacific. For every convoy that defends successfully, another is caught unprepared somewhere else. Japanese captains grow cautious. They zigzag constantly. They hug coastlines. They wait for larger escort groups. All of it slows movement. All of it consumes fuel. Fuel that is already becoming scarce. By mid-1944, reports from Japanese bases reveal shortages. Aircraft training hours are reduced. Naval exercises shrink. Ships sit idle for lack of oil. The impact spreads outward like ripples in water. On American submarines, there is no celebration. The work is relentless. Patrol after patrol, long weeks underwater, sudden bursts of action. Harper stands on the bridge one evening at sunset. The sky glows orange and red. Calm water stretches to the horizon. He thinks back to those early patrols in 1942. The silent impacts, the helpless frustration. Now, the ocean feels different. Not safer, never safe, but purposeful. Below him, Ortega writes a letter home. He does not describe explosions or sinking ships. He writes about long hours and cramped quarters, about missing birthdays, about hoping the war will end sooner rather than later. What neither man fully sees yet is how decisive this shift has become. By the end of 1944, American submarines will sink more Japanese merchant tonnage than any other arm of the United States Navy. Oil imports will drop drastically. Supply lines will shrink to a fraction of what they once were. An empire built on movement is beginning to stall, and it started with fixing a weapon that once refused to explode. But the final proof of that transformation is still ahead. July 18, 1945. East China Sea, 4:40 in the morning. The sky is pale gray, the horizon barely visible through humid summer haze. The war has raged for nearly 4 years in the Pacific. Entire cities have burned, fleets have clashed, islands have changed hands. Beneath the surface, USS Sargo glides silently. Lieutenant Commander Harper stands at the periscope one more time. His hair is flecked with gray now. The lines on his face are deeper. He has spent more of this war underwater than above it. Ahead, a small convoy struggles northward. 2 cargo ships, 1 escort. They move cautiously, zigzagging even in open water. Japan is no longer confident. Range 1,000 yards, the fire control officer whispers. Chief Ortega closes the breech door on the final torpedo in the forward room. He pauses for half a second, hand resting on cold steel. 4 years ago, he did not trust this weapon. Now, he does. Fire 1. The torpedo surges forward. Harper watches through the lens. The wake runs straight, clean, steady. The explosion splits the dawn. A deep, heavy blast lifts the cargo ship from the water. Smoke rolls into the brightening sky. The second torpedo strikes moments later. The ship lists sharply, its bow rising as crew members scramble toward lifeboats. The escort turns desperately, dropping depth charges in widening circles. But its pattern feels almost ritual now. The damage has already been done. Sargo dives, engines humming softly as the ocean closes overhead. Inside the control room, no one cheers. They have seen too much to celebrate destruction. But there is a quiet understanding among them. This is the end of something. By the summer of 1945, Japan's merchant fleet has been devastated. Oil shipments have fallen to a trickle. Factories struggle for raw materials. Food shortages spread across the home islands. Training flights are reduced because aviation fuel is scarce. Warships remain in harbor because there's not enough oil to sail. The submarine campaign, once doubted and dismissed, has tightened like a slow, steady grip. Years earlier, Japanese officers reviewed reports of failed torpedoes and laughed at the idea of American submarines being decisive. Convoys sailed boldly. Tankers crossed thousands of miles with limited escort. That confidence is gone. Now, even coastal waters feel dangerous. Harper sits alone in his small cabin after the attack. A folded patrol report rests on his desk. He thinks back to January 1942, to that first perfect shot that ended in silence. He remembers lowering the periscope in disbelief. He remembers writing "no detonation" again and again. History rarely turns in a single moment. It shifts gradually, quietly. A corrected mechanism. A redesigned firing pin. A commander who listens instead of dismissing. The Mark 14 torpedo did not change overnight. But once it worked as intended, the effect rippled across an ocean. Across the Pacific theater, submarines have sunk thousands of ships by this stage of the war. Tankers, freighters, transports. The numbers are staggering, but the real story is not in statistics. It is in what did not arrive. Fuel that never reached carriers. Ammunition that never reached island garrisons. Food that never reached distant bases. An empire built on sea lanes found those lanes cut. On deck later that evening, Sargo surfaces in calm water. The sky is clear, stars beginning to appear. The crew breathes fresh air deeply, grateful for a moment above the waves. Ortega leans against the railing beside Harper. "Hard to believe," Ortega says softly. Harper nods. Not long ago, they fought their own equipment as much as the enemy. Now, the ocean itself feels like an ally. For viewers looking back decades later, it may seem inevitable. Of course the flaws would be fixed. Of course the submarines would adapt. But in early 1942, nothing felt certain. Confidence was fragile. Supplies were limited. The Pacific was vast. And somewhere in that vastness, a torpedo that refused to explode nearly altered the rhythm of the war. Instead, persistence, testing, and hard-earned lessons transformed the submarine force into one of the most effective weapons in the Pacific conflict. When Japan laughed at American torpedoes, it saw only the early failures. It did not see what was coming. By the time the ocean turned against its shipping lanes, the shift was irreversible. Weeks later, in August 1945, the war in the Pacific will come to an end. But long before the final announcements, before the formal ceremonies, the quiet work beneath the waves has already reshaped the battlefield. The lesson is simple, but powerful. In war, small mechanical failures can echo across continents, and small corrections can change the course of history. The sea remembers both.